All right, everyone. The Canes play their biggest game since 2017, a Saturday night in Clemson to take on the ACC defending champions, the Clemson Tigers. And we want to cover it to the wall, to the ceiling, to all four corners here on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So glad that you could join us tonight. And hope to have a number of people on the line to take your calls and also take your comments, of course, in the live chat. Miami-Clemson should be a good one. Maybe, maybe not. I know what type of comments I'll get here. I will try to balance out the conversation throughout this week. In addition to a perspective from the Miami side, you can expect us to get the Clemson take as well from writers and broadcasters covering Clemson football. So we will have that all week here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right. First and foremost, would like you to also understand that we're on Patreon. Please join us there for my predictions. 27-17 against the spread this season. 27-17 against the spread. And for anybody that lays a buck or two against the line, understands that is getting the job done. 27-17 against the spread. 9-5 Saturday against the spread. Even though the Canes have not been good to me, I'm only 1-2 against the spread with Miami taking UAB and taking Louisville against the line. And then I took the Canes to cover against FSU. Again, join me on Patreon. I'll leave the link in the live chat. Also want to make this all about you in regards to your comments, your questions about Miami football, the matchup against Clemson, the state of the program, the personnel, anything you'd like to talk about concerning Miami and Clemson, anything in college football in general, but we will focus on the Canes and the Tigers, of course. The last time they played was in the 2017 ACC championship game. Dare I repeat the score here? Clemson won by something less than 50. All right. Also, the last time they played before that was another down moment in Miami history. And again, this is the biggest game for Clemson or for Miami. Going back to 2017 would be the biggest win since then. Certainly in looking at the game against Louisville at the time, and that's been inside 2 weeks. I felt certainly that this was Miami's biggest win, aside from you could always argue the rivalry against Florida State. But the biggest win for Miami 2 weeks ago at Louisville that the Canes have had since 2017, in which they defeated Virginia Tech and Notre Dame in back-to-back weeks to eventually get them to 10-0 before they slid off the cliff. And then it was rough riding ever since up until this season, going 13-16 during a 29-game stretch, and the record against the Power 5 much worse than that. But it's a new era in Miami, potentially. Manny Diaz and the troops look much better, especially on offense this season against the likes of UAB, Louisville, and Florida State. The worst Florida State team we've probably seen since 1975 or 6. And a Louisville team that's decent, not great, horrible on defense, skilled and fast on offense, and UAB, of course, is a group of 5 team. So this is the test. Taking on a top 70 team in UAB, a top 30 to 35 team, 40 team in Louisville, and a top zillion team in Florida State. So I'm going to take your comments in the chat. Of course, you can call me here at 860-325-3687 as well. So the questions of the night, and I will do my best. It could be difficult if we got as much traffic in here as I hope that we would, but I wanted to get your game scores on Miami-Clemson and count those up. Also, Miami keys to the game in taking down what is been voted as the number 1 team in the country. They're not number 1 in my poll, the top 25 that actually makes sense. So in the top 25 that actually makes sense, I would have to look at it, but I've got Clemson and Miami both in the top 5 or 6 in the country, but you would have to check out the poll on Patreon, and I will leave that link in the chat. Please join us there on Patreon on our Voice of College Football community. And so much hype given to De'Ara King's transfer from Houston during the offseason, and he's lived up to it thus far. This may have seemed like a ridiculous question a few weeks ago, and maybe it is still a ridiculous question, but since this is a Miami channel, and I'm curious to get your feedback, De'Ara King and Trevor Lawrence, who's the better quarterback in this matchup? So, 3 questions I'm asking. Number 1 would be your game score, Saturday night, Miami at Clemson. Number 2, keys for the Canes against Clemson. And at number 3 would be Lawrence and King, who's the better quarterback? Let's get to the comments. Got Sean on the line. Good to see you, Sean. Nate as well. Good to see you, Darian. Arian. Daryl. Tough for me to see some of these. Goosenon, Chris. Ralph Lauren's mascot. Arian, Nate again. Candy Canes. Goosenon and Rod the Goat. Brevin and Mallory are about to eat. Goosenon says Clemson struggled with UVA about as much as Miami struggled with UAB or with Clemson. Curveball. Howdy, Mark, and all my Canes family. Oh, and the rest of the people, I guess. Arian. Sorry, Arlen. Arlen, my bad. Our defensive line should eat. Clemson's O-line ain't that good. So the Clemson offensive line was a question coming into the season. 4 starters gone from last year's unit. We haven't seen them tested yet. I did not see the game against Virginia. I saw a couple drives against Wake Forest. They clearly just annihilated Wake Forest. The final score, whatever it was not indicative of how much Clemson just destroyed Wake Forest. And it's easy to dismiss Wake Forest, but they've been a 7 or 8 win football team for the past several seasons. Probably not that good this year. The Citadel was a scrimmage, basically. And now, again, Virginia provided some resistance at 27-17 at one point, early second half, but Clemson quickly took care of Virginia. And I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in that game. So I did not see Virginia's defensive line against Clemson to see what was there. Miami's run defense has not been exceptional. I did say several times during the offseason when eyeing potential matchups, not just in this matchup, but in games across the land to try to determine what could be surprising upsets. And that's what an upset is, right? Surprising. Would be the likes of Russo, Phillips, and Roche against Trevor Lawrence in the offensive line in pressuring a great quarterback, a great college quarterback. And the formula goes back years and years and years and years to the Steel Curtain and the Doomsday defense and the Bears 46 defense. It goes back to pressuring great quarterbacks, pressuring any quarterbacks, but even making great quarterbacks look ordinary or bad when they're on their back and when they're intimidated, when they can't step up in the pocket, and when they have to throw off their platform constantly. And when they're on their back foot and when they're hurried and bothered and they've got hands in their face and they've got guys tugging at their jersey and around their shoulders trying to throw the football downfield. And most notably in recent football history, in terms of a huge game, was, of course, the matchup in which the New York Giants front four made Tom Brady look normal and the New England Patriots that were going for an undefeated season. And that was the formula. More so than anything else in that game was the pressure on Tom Brady. So pressure against Trevor Lawrence. And I know Russo is not, of course, playing. He's opting out, and he's not on the team. But going back to the offseason, that's what my formula was for a Miami upset. And in eyeing Clemson's opponents, that's why I thought Miami would be the biggest threat, because they could match them athletically and because of the pass rush on the edge. And Jalen Phillips has lived up to his his recruiting ranking and the hype, he has been that good and that dangerous, and he's looked the part of an elite defensive end. Daryl Page, I'm more worried about number 9 than I am 16. Yes, Travis Etienne. I get that. Especially the way the Canes have not played run defense. Goosenine Chris, their corners are solid. Defensive line young, but have skill. Of course they do. Goosenine thinks it'll be a close game. YG likes Miami in this one, 30-21. So mark one down for the Canes. Let's see, are we going to count this up? Something tells me Miami might have a slight advantage in the polling here tonight. YG 30-21. We've got Psychotic Ninja 100. My hope, Miami 35-31. What will probably happen is Clemson 45-21. Okay? I haven't seen the spread on this game. Curveball, my opinion, Miami does not have the defense or the depth to beat Clemson. I think Clemson wins by 14 minimum. I hope Miami wins, but I don't see it. Whoop. Arlen, curveball, you need to have confidence. Come on. Goosenine, we have the defensive line, but no linebackers to cover Travis. And that's how Clemson beat Ohio State. The Buckeyes shut down the traditional running game at the running back position from Etienne, and they dominated up front. But Ohio State had its way against Clemson's wide receivers. So you would think that most tremendous football teams, especially with one of the best running backs in the nation and one of the best passing attacks in the nation, would win that way. And they certainly tried with running the football from the running back position and throwing the ball downfield to the wide receivers. But Ohio State was up to the challenge, took away the wide receivers, took away Etienne. Clemson beat them by running the ball from the quarterback position, and Trevor Lawrence surprising many people with his ability to run and beat linebackers in the open field, and that Etienne was then used in the fourth quarter as a receiver out of the backfield to beat the Buckeyes in the playoffs. Curveball. Got Daryl Page says Canes win at 35-38. Usually we put the winning score in front of the losing score, 35-38. 38-35, 2-2 score here. Jordan, you're doing something right when an 18-point game over a decent Power 5 team is considered a struggle. Yes, the standards are high. John says 35-31 Miami. If they can run the ball well. No conditions on the predictions. They need to run the ball well to win. Nesta, big key in this game according to Sandhush. King, Woodlocks, Miami key to the game is field position, special teams, and stopping the run. Clemson shows a lot of wild looks, and keep in mind that Miami can kick field goals this year from distance. Clemson wins 34-27 according to Nate. Jovi says Etienne played well, but lots of missed tackles by Virginia. We have to bring him down on first contact. Guzman. Jordan losing track here. I don't think Clemson's performance against UVA is what Miami will see on Saturday. Yeah, we got to throw that away. Daryl Page, if the Canes can slow Etienne, we can win. Number 9 runs hard all night long. Dre Ball needs some Mark Pope. Need him to step up and not be afraid. Psychotic Ninja 100. I can see it being a close game or Miami getting blown out. I don't know what to even expect if I'm being real. Yeah. Hey, it's nice to hear somebody say, you know what? I have no idea. Eddie likes Clemson 42-21. Eddie, realistic. Eddie, good to see you as always. Darian, the GOAT, I need our corners to come and play. Clemson's wide receivers will eat if they don't. Jordan Bowman says Andrew Booth did a fantastic job against a 6'7" receiver. I was very proud. Good to see you, man. Thanks for saying hi and stopping by for our Miami chat with the Clemson Tigers coming up Saturday night. Of course, join us on Patreon. That is key. That is key to these live streams, is that we not only talk college football, but you get on over to Patreon and please support us there. It is crucial to keep this going. I will leave the link below. Let's do that right now, and I'll get back to the score predictions and anything else that you guys have. Keep in mind that we do have the phone lines open at 860-325-3687. That's 860-325-3687. Excuse me for just a second. I've got to grab this Patreon link. It is quite essential as I continue to lose subscribers for the first time ever because of the situation going on right now. Just lost more. I should have gained, usually do about 500 to 700 subscribers this month, and I've lost about 40. All right, that's where you can find us. And again, it's 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. I will post it in just a second, but I can't post both the number and your comments. Please join us on Patreon. I have lost track of where I was with these scores and the other comments. I need an assistant. I need a producer. All right, John says 35-31 Miami, if we can run the ball well. That's right. We left it off with Eddie at 42-21. And then we had, of course, Arlen chiming in and Rod the Goat, Jose Borregales for the game winner. Bam. From 57. Miami leads this one 5-3. No, they lead it 6-3. Dennis J says 35-21. Big win for the Canes right there. Jovi 41-34. Am I surprised here? I'm shocked. Clemson is favored by 16. Somebody asked me the line the other day, and I said 16. If Miami keeps scoring, we'll be good. Electric Kane likes Miami 38-30. Yes, Luke, I saw the last 10 minutes of the game against BC. Interesting game. Very exciting game. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Quite a bit. Underrated good game on Saturday. North Carolina holding off BC on a 2-point conversion. Luke likes Clemson 45-23. Luke also likes, I'm sure, Clemson and North Carolina in the ACC championship game. Dre Ball, 901. I think it comes down to coaching. Clemson wins. Ten to 3, Miami in a rout. B Mars, 25. Good to see you. Jordan says a lot of people in here have Miami scoring in the 30s. I don't see it. It's been 30 the last two games. It's a 3 and a 0. We had a 3 in 2017. We had a 0 in 2015 from the Canes. Kevon likes the Canes 38-35. Ross telling us that Miami's defense still is not to put together a complete game. Bye week helps the D, and the offense keeps tightening up. Canes win 31-24. Sounds like a national championship game score. Jeff, good to see you. Appreciate you chiming in from time to time, and you left us a great comment to one of the videos recently I saw on the comment section here or elsewhere. No fumbles or drops No interceptions for King. No bad penalties. We will need to see the turnover chain a few times. Pressure Lawrence all game. The only way we have a chance to win. Otherwise, it can be a long night. Jeff says Clemson 42, Miami 21. Nate's in the house. Good to see you. Rod the Goat, Lashley versus Venables is going to be beautiful. Yes. Chess match. Isaiah Holt, 32-21, Canes. Luke Walker, Clemson going to have at least 5 sacks. So what do we have here from Kansas City Cartel? Hey, Mark, are you still at a 25% chance that Miami wins a week later? Based on the Canes not playing and Clemson winning fairly easily over Virginia, a game in which they got pushed a little bit until the third quarter, pretty much, I will give Miami a 25% chance of winning. That's not necessarily a prediction, of course, because a prediction is here's who's going to win the game. That generally just means that if they could feasibly play 100 times, I would expect Miami to win about 25 times. In the preseason, I gave Miami, I believe, a 15% chance of winning in August, and ESPN's FPI gave Miami a 4% chance of winning, 3 or 4% chance of winning. I went as high as 15% and then said 25% last week. Yep. Zoo Pride 85-47. Miami's capable of putting up points on this team. I was watching the game against UVA when they played Clemson, and UVA got in the red zone at least 6 times, but could not capitalize. There you go. Jordan's got me. Catalyst 99. I like your thought here. This is being realistic. Take T-Law and Etienne out of it, and we got this. Oh, I got you. Take them out of the game, meaning take them out of the game plan, meaning eliminate them. I thought you meant like let them break down on the way to the game and they never get suited up and they don't hit the field, and we got this. Manny's never won a game following a bye week. Well, he's only had how many? 3? We got Harley's Joker YT score 31 for the Canes and 27 for the Tigers. Canes bot. Miami wins 37-21. Luke Walker, UNC, Virginia Tech is an underrated game this week. You know, the noon games, Luke, are really good. Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Texas A&M, and your game, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. Yes, I want to see all 3 of those games. I look exhausted. Okay, I need to get some shut-eye then. We'll shut this down. Brody, 38-35 Canes. Jose Borregales with a game-winning field goal. Calvin likes Miami 42-31. A lot of scores for the Canes in the high 30s and 40s. Okay. Daryl says, Mark, what would you take from a close Miami loss? I would take that as a positive for the Canes. And by a close loss, I don't necessarily mean that they've got to lose on the last drive on a game-winning touchdown pass or a last-minute field goal, something like that. I mean, be competitive, be in the game, be within 2 scores, through the entire game. Be there. Be competitive. You can recognize when a football game's competitive, and sometimes a football game is competitive that's 34-17, 31-17. Sometimes. It's not all about just the final score. Now, the final score is where we start. That's indicative of how close the teams are, but that's not the end-all, be-all to the evaluation of two teams. I've seen games that were 41-17 that I thought this was a really good game, and these teams, just one of them made, the team with 17, made a lot of mistakes and allowed it to get out of their hands. But athletically and in terms of football skill, these teams are pretty close, as opposed to I've seen games that were 24-20 in which one team was dominant, they made mistakes and allowed the other team to stay in it. So, but the score is indicative, of course, of the flow of the game and the dominance of the two teams. And if you told me that that Miami was going to lose this game by 10 or 14 points, I would be okay with that in regards to saying that Miami is most likely one of the four best teams in the conference, that they can hang with Clemson just about as good as anyone in the conference, because that has yet to be shown that anyone can stay that close to Clemson. And I know that Clemson has not gone undefeated, and I know that North Carolina took them down to a 2-point conversion. But the team that has been closest to Clemson in the conference since 2016 has not stayed with them. It's been the oddball, strange occurrence of a Pitt, a Syracuse, and North Carolina jumping up, but those teams not being strong the rest of the year, if you follow me. So those teams have not proven to be good against everybody else. And then they had a big game. They had a nice matchup. They had an injury in the case of Syracuse upsetting Clemson at home with Kelly Bryant. But the second best team in the conference, the third best team in the conference, has not shown that they can hang, where they're consistently showing that they're below Clemson and above everybody else. Plus, they played with Clemson. All those teams, which was Miami in 2017 and Florida State, and it was Virginia and Pitt the last 2 years, of course, in the championship game, and it was North Carolina State at times when they were better. And again, it was Florida State when they were better. And it was, last season, Virginia was probably the second best team in the conference. And, of course, they lost the championship game by 6 touchdowns. So if you follow me, the second and third best teams, the teams on the next tier, if there is such a thing, but at the top of the next tier in the ACC, have been drubbed by Clemson since Florida State dropped off following 2016. So Miami, if they can stay within roughly 2 scores, depending on how they play, how the game is played, within 2 scores. Something in that range, competitive. I've not seen Ukulele play. It's going to be forever. He's probably going to be the starter and have to win multiple national championships before I get either the spelling or pronunciation of his name. Gooseman Chris, 23-20, Clemson or Miami toss-up. None of those, Gooseman. Pick a side. Curveball. Yeah, Luke, it will settle who the 4th best team in the ACC is this year. That being Virginia Tech and North Carolina. Sam is telling us the difference between Miami and Clemson is that Miami has to play a nearly perfect game and Clemson can afford to make mistakes. It's a tall order for Miami, who has not come close to being flawless. Catalyst 99, what are the chances that Miami would play Clemson again in the ACC championship game? Well, they've got dates coming up against North Carolina and against Virginia Tech that are going to be crucial. And Notre Dame also has to play Clemson. So if this would be an interesting situation if Miami lost just to Clemson and Notre Dame lost just to Clemson and they don't play each other, who would go to the ACC championship game between Miami and Notre Dame if they were both, 10-1 if they get all the games in and they don't play each other and they lost to the same team. It probably goes to common opponents, but it should go, I hope it does not go to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, because that should not happen. It should be something tangible, something that could be quantified. And, if I was in charge of the ACC, which if I was John Swofford, I would have not allowed Notre Dame to enter the league without joining the league. But had I been in charge of that decision and I would have been forced into allowing Notre Dame to join the ACC for this one season, I would have told them, if there's a tie where you're involved to play in the ACC championship game, you lose the tie automatically. The real ACC team gets the nod over you for the championship game spot. Luke, we're going to have a fun time with that one, North Carolina, Miami, because I know that you are convinced North Carolina is better, and Miami fans, of course, think what they think. And I think you're both a bit ridiculous, to be sure, because that should be a good one. Yeah, they were. Jordan, North Carolina, and Virginia Tech gave you decent games back-to-back years in 2015 and 16 in the ACC championship game. Since then, it's been a rout. I believe the score has been, added up 38-3, 42-10, 63-21. George tells us to like the video. Thank you so much, George. He could only stop by for a second, but he said, like the video. Yeah, the BC quarterback is better than Ian Book, based on what I saw last week, which was only the fourth quarter. Goose Town Chris, if Miami loses, do we drop out of the top 25? In what manner did you lose? And what did everybody else do? It's all tied together. I've got Miami right now, I believe, at number. I've got, let's see, it would go Miami at number 5, I believe. That's where I have them. Clemson at 4. Are you talking about my top 25? Seth is asking about Texas-Oklahoma thoughts for next week. Good chance Oklahoma falls to 1-3. Texas has not looked good either. But they've looked better than Oklahoma, especially in this game against TCU, in which they should have won the game. Of course, they turned it over at the goal line with 2.5 minutes left, or they probably would have. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello, Mark Rogers TV. This is Dave Greenfield. How are you, sir?
Hi, David. How are you?
How are you doing this evening?
Good.
Excellent. Excellent. Hey, I was looking at some of the games coming up this week. I'm interested in that Tennessee-Georgia game. I think people have been talking up Tennessee a little bit. Maybe is there a vibe? Is Tennessee kind of back? You have any early feelings on that game?
My feelings are that Georgia's roster is supreme over Tennessee's, and I think it's going to be a decent game, and we're going to stick to Miami-Clemson talk because we're on the Miami channel, and it's a Miami live stream. So that's about my thought on that game.
Well, I hear you. Yeah, by the way, on Miami-Clemson, I did want to talk to you about that, too. I want to see if this King is for real for quarterback, by the way. What are your feelings about him early on? I watched him play a little bit, but he's got to be an upgrade on what they've had before.
Oh, absolutely, he is. He's done pretty much what I would have expected him to do. He doesn't need to prove himself. He accounted for 50 touchdowns in the American Conference 2 years ago. I think he's really good. I think that they have to design some plays that help him get out of all that traffic. His height, I think that height for quarterbacks is not as important. People have proven that in recent years, like Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, as it used to be, but still it's important. And that for the few times that he's had any issues this year, that's been a bit of a problem. And they have to get him out of harm's way that way and get him on the perimeter to sometimes see and sometimes threaten the defense with his legs. But I think he's a top 10 to 15 quarterback in the country.
Yeah, I mean, he looks good. A few years ago they had that Brad Ty at quarterback. I thought he, had a future and had some potential, and it never really worked out that way for him. And who was the guy the quarterback that they had last year? Cozy, was it Perry? What was his name?
Well, they had N'Kosi Perry after Jaron Williams got benched.
Perry, yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
After they benched Jaron Williams.
Right. So it seems like that's the key with most teams. They just really haven't been able to find a real, legitimate, threat at the quarterback position. But he may be it. I mean, obviously you're going to find out this week. How much have you seen of Clemson so far this year?
I watched a few drives against Wake Forest, and that's about it.
Yeah, I've seen him a little bit. I mean, I still think offensively. I mean, as long as they have Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, I always get it wrong. Is it ETN or ATN? They're running back.
I go ETN. ETN.
Okay, ETN.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I still think he's one of the best running backs in the country. I thought the Justin Ross loss at wide receiver was going to hurt them, but I have not watched them enough to see who's kind of emerging at the wide receiver position. I know they have a young receiver who was very good for them a couple of years ago, Rogers, who was a freshman and had a pretty good role on that 2018 national championship team. But I don't know what else they have at the wide receiver position.
Well, they've got the two freshmen from last year who got some playing time and looked pretty good, and they're Frank Latson and Joseph Nagata would be their second and third threats at wide receiver.
Right.
So they've been hurt at wide receiver. They've recruited extremely well, and they, as you know, have probably had the best wide receivers of any team in the country in the last 7 or 8 years. But they're probably down a notch or two this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, you go back to that run. I mean, from DeAndre Hopkins to Sammy Watkins to Mike Williams to, the guys that they've had most recently. Yeah, they've had an incredible run at wide receiver. As a Buckeye fan, I remember running into Sammy Watkins, and that was a tough situation because he was tough. But yeah, I mean, they recruited extremely well. I don't know how good their defense is, though. I mean, they did lose some key personnel off that defense from a year ago. Simmons has gone at linebacker. They lost Tanner Muse. They lost Terrell in the secondary. So they lost a few key guys. I know that's an area they recruit pretty well, and I know Venables is a good defensive coordinator. Any feeling for how good they are on defense?
Well, now based on what we've seen, I don't have any feel for it because Virginia and Wake Forest just aren't anything that we can really judge. But certainly they didn't have any issues in that game for the most part. And again, I'm going to be watching Clemson for the first time, although I've got to work, so I'm not going to be watching the game live. But yeah, I've got to think that they're going to be nearly as strong as that they always are. James Skalski's one of the best linebackers in the country, and the defensive line may actually, from what I've read in preparing for this live stream, might be a little bit better than it was last year. Yeah,
well, that's why I thought we had a chance to beat them last year. is because their defensive line wasn't quite as good as it was. Obviously, they had the best defensive line in the country in 2018 because all those guys came back, to help them win that national championship and, didn't go to the NFL. So, that was – but, yeah, I've heard that they've recruited well in that area and they could have some pretty good talent there. So, that's going to be an interesting matchup to see if Miami can match up in the trenches. So –
yeah, Miami's offensive line appears to be much improved, but they're going to have to be substantially improved to deal with Clemson's defensive front, because that's been Miami's biggest issue in big games over the past 5 years has been, as you mentioned, quarterback play, and which has been really bad since Brad Kaya left, and the offensive line.
Right. What's the overall line on the game right now?
That's a great question. I don't know. I would guess it's about 12. Okay. That's my guess.
I was going to say 13, but yeah, okay.
I'm just guessing. I don't know. I've not looked at it. I'm sure somebody will and put it in the live chat.
Okay. Right now, I don't know. If it's a two-score, I could see Clemson covering 2 scores. But, Miami would really have to catch some breaks, and this quarterback would have to look really, really good for them to, I think, keep it real, real close. That's my early vibe. I don't know what yours is.
Yeah, well, conventional thinking is that Clemson's still head and shoulders above anybody else in the ACC. But if there's one team in the conference that, from an athletic standpoint, can hang with Clemson, it would be Miami. More so, maybe even than Notre Dame. And Miami's really been hurt by bad quarterback play, and that's what's kept them back more than anything else. And so they've got a quarterback who is both dynamic, running and throwing, and also makes the right decisions.
Okay. So you think of all 3 of those teams in the ACC, North Carolina, Notre Dame, and then Miami, the most likely of the 3 teams to give them a game or having a chance to beat them is Miami?
I think, based to take into account what we've seen this year, but also what we know to be true about the personnel on these rosters, because to me, we haven't seen enough football just to base it on what we've seen this year, but we've got to take into account what we know about these teams coming into the season, that Miami has the biggest and highest ceiling among the teams that we're talking about, but they're probably at least going into the season not nearly as consistent as the other teams we're talking about. Notre Dame, I wouldn't say North Carolina has shown us consistency, but you know what I mean? They're on such a high rise. It's tough to track North Carolina because they're on such a trajectory.
Right.
But Notre Dame's been consistently the most, has been the second best out of all these 15 teams currently in the ACC. There's no question about that. But, take, for example, the 2017 game between Miami and Notre Dame. Notre Dame and Miami, they were roughly, the track record, the resume for the season was almost even. But when Miami was on full cylinders hitting that night, they ran away from them. They annihilated them.
Sure.
Well, so I think Miami's got the best puncher's chance is what I'm trying to say. But they could also lose by the most from those 3 participants.
Well, Miami was playing incredible football, obviously, as you mentioned before, until those last couple games of the year. And then that kick game just totally started their downside, after that. And then, obviously Clemson whacked them in the title game. And then, Wisconsin got a pretty good win in that bowl game, too. So, and Notre Dame, it kind of feels like, been there, done that before. I guess it's going to be at Notre Dame, but although, how big of a difference could that make? I don't know. But I just don't know if Notre Dame has the firepower to stay with Clemson. That's the thing that would bother me. North Carolina, I do like their team. I like their quarterback. But I just, last year they stayed in that game against them and had a chance to win that game at the end. But I think that was because Clemson just was not playing their best football at that particular period of time. And they just weren't really clicking offensively. Just watching that game a year ago, the North Carolina-Clemson Clemson game.
Yeah, that was a one-off. It
that
showed us what North Carolina was capable of. But if those teams played on a consistent basis, Clemson would not be winning that game by 1 point most of the time. They'd be winning by 14 to 17 to 20 points.
Right. And that's what I was trying to say. And certainly Clemson was a different team at that point in the season than they were at the end of the season when they were, obviously running through the ACC and winning games by bigger margins and looking far more impressive towards the end of the season. So, but I think it could be a good one. I'm hoping for a competitive game, and hopefully, Miami can keep it within a couple scores and maybe give Clemson a little bit of a scare. So we'll see.
There you go, David. I would hope to see a good one as well. It would be nice to see somebody compete with Clemson in that conference.
Yeah, well, like we were talking about before, I mean, maybe it's just this year I feel a little bit stronger about the conference being a little bit more competitive than I have in years past. Just because Notre Dame is a part of it, and then North Carolina does look a little bit better, and then Miami does look a little bit better with the quarterback. I would agree with you, long term, like we were talking about the other day for the ACC, we still, your point is well taken. We have to see it on a consistent basis before it's, proven that this conference can be competitive with the other conferences in college football, and that the ACC is right there with, or even close to, the SEC or the Big Ten, or, even in that category. So, I get your point with, what you were trying to make the other day, but at least this year it looks like there's some more competitive football, I would say.
I think we experienced that a couple times early in the season every year, but especially this year with not everyone playing, and the field is really thinned out, that early in the season, in the first couple of weeks, especially week 1, we will see a matchup where either both teams or one of the teams, just because the bright lights are on and the uniforms look shiny and good, and they've got some kind of name recognition or brand name, that we just are lulled into it being a big game. And then we find out later in the season when we look back, those were a couple 6-6 teams. Like a Notre Dame Texas game comes to mind from about 5 years ago, that we thought, Texas is back. They just beat Notre Dame. And it was week 1 or week 2, and Texas was sitting there at 5-7 by the end of the year.
Mark, it seems like we've had like 50 Texas games over the last 10 years, where we keep on saying, this is the game where Texas could be back. And then, lo and behold, it doesn't come to pass, right?
Yeah, that's it.
So, all right, well, let's hope we have a good one this weekend. It was a pleasure talking to you. Hey, are you going to be the Buckeye live stream? Are you going to be back doing that anytime soon?
Absolutely. The boys are on every Friday. They were on this past Friday as well.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to the start of the Big Ten here come the 24th. So hopefully we've got a good one in the ACC this weekend. Pleasure talking to you, Mark.
Thank you, David. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
It's our man, David Greenfield, a Buckeyes fan, but he can talk college football across the map. He must have mentioned a dozen Clemson players during that conversation. So we appreciate David's contribution and his input, again, as a Buckeyes fan into college football across the board. 860-325-3687. Although somebody told me I look exhausted, I should get to bed. I failed to recognize, yes, Norman, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Norman, we appreciate it so much. Norman letting us know that to stay close, we have to win or at least play equally well on special teams. Miami's got the punter. Now you've got a kicker. So that's a huge factor in it. You still have to account for returning the football in the punt game and the kickoff game. And, of course, the coverage units are probably more important than the kickoff and punt returns. If you secure the ball on the punts and then you just down it on the kickoffs, sure, it's great to get the big return. But in terms of priority, depending on the number of opportunities, what kind of game it is, sometimes your place kicker is not a factor because he kicks 4 extra points and that's it. Other times he's counted on for 3 field goals. One's at the end of the half and one's at the end of the game. So it's enormous. The punter, if your offense is humming and he only punts 3 times, big deal. Other times he punts 7 or 8 or 9 times, hopefully not that many, but something more than 3 times. And a number of those times are crucial because he could either kick the ball out of bounds or in the end zone, or he could down it inside the 10 or the 5. So it varies game to game. But I think in order of special teams, this is off the top of my head, not giving this a lot of thought, but I don't think there's any question based on what I just said. Kickoff return is the least important. Punt return, because you do have to secure the football, is next important, but not nearly as important as some other facets. Then it's kickoff coverage, because of what I just mentioned. Most of the time, the other teams will down the ball to get it out at the 25. Then the punt coverage, then the punter, so that works in concert with one another, and then the field goal kicking. We see the games won and lost every week, a handful of games on field goal kicking, whether that be a field goal kicker who can hit one from 55 to win the game, or a field goal kicker that missed from 28, 30, and 37 in a particular game and went over 3, and they lost by 6. So, Norman, thank you so much for the contribution there and the comment on the special teams. Norman also says we can give up the back shoulder completions, which Lawrence does so well, better than any other quarterback. Come to think of it, you're right. He does. And we also want to acknowledge Chuck C., who's contributed a number of times. Chuck C., we thank you so much for your contribution tonight. After watching the entire game against Virginia yesterday, the one thing that jumped out at me was that they did not seem to be penetrating the backfield. So that's good for Knighton and Harris and Chaney. And that the offensive line for Miami doesn't have to be stellar. It can just be capable, that they've got a chance against this Clemson defensive front. We know that the Clemson defensive line isn't what it was 2 years ago, when it was arguably the best in the history of the game. From a talent perspective, it probably was the best in the history of the game, because the talent is weighed out by the NFL draft status. Whether they produced at that level on the field for that season, I believe that they did for the most part. They didn't underachieve, but I don't know that they had the most devastating season of any defensive line in history, but they had the best draft status of anybody ever as a group. And then, of course, they fell off last year, but we're still one of the 10 best defensive lines in the country. And they're supposed to be better this year with KJ Henry emerging, Xavier Thomas hopefully hitting his ceiling, hopefully reaching his potential, and this Brian Brzee, who's been phenomenal. He had a sack against Virginia. But Chuck C. is telling us not much penetration for Clemson against Virginia. And, of course, that bodes well for the Miami offensive line that has struggled. The Miami offensive line has not been good since. Fill in the blank for me, Miami fans, because even when Brad Kaya was there, and this was not a good team for him to be playing on from the point of pass protection, because he was a statue. He needed pass protection. And David or somebody else commented on Kaya's performance at Miami, which I thought he had a nice career. I'm going to guess that he had a couple seasons with 25 touchdowns and 10 or 12 picks, Brad Kaya. So Chuck C., thank you so much for the super chat contribution. And everybody in here, 2 points along that line. Please like the video, share the video on social media, comment here, of course, but also the super chat's available. And also Patreon. Please join me on Patreon. That's where you can find Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and all the great content that we have. All right, let's pick up where we left off. Adam, the sports guy, good to see you as well, man. Chuck C., whoever is worried that Clemson doesn't have wide receiver depth right now isn't paying attention. Ladson is going to show up to be a star before this year's over. He's a watch him get off the bus dude. All right, Chuck C., thank you so much. I will back off of questioning Clemson's wide receiver core. Jabari Jones, what team do you think the Sun Belt should get next? Sun Belt should get an extra team. Notre Dame. Notre Dame's looking for a conference. They weren't able to choose the ACC. They snubbed their nose at the ACC. So I would think Notre Dame is looking for a conference when I become the commissioner, when all of you kind of force that. You run the hashtag Voice of College Football, Commissioner of College Football. You got to shorten that up. And then I become the commissioner of college football. And then I mandate that the college football playoff will not include Notre Dame until the Irish join a conference. So I think that they're going to be eligible for the Sun Belt. There you go. Adam, what you got for me here? My man Mark Rogers is back. There's a lot going on there, Adam. Let's not get into it. But I'm not necessarily back. I'm lurking in the shadows. I'm being put down by the man right now, and this is a rare appearance, and I'm working through it and fighting. Working, I would hope to be working through it, but more or less fighting through it and doing all that I can. Like, share, and comment to the videos to support the hardest working man on the YouTube. I threw in the. Yeah, I'm getting a bit delirious. Maybe I do need some rest. Chuck C., do Miami and Clemson have a starting safety out for the first half? Interesting. I don't know. Somebody let us know on that. Who was I reading? Oh, my goodness. I read too much, and then I can't remember what teams I was reading about now that had a couple players kicked out last week, but they will be back for this week because they were first half ejections. Daryl thinks Ed Reed is making a difference. Who is going to miss the first half for Miami? Daryl is saying they dismissed the targeting foul. Safety will play the full game. Okay. Jordan says Lambden Zanders had a tackle that was reviewed for targeting, but they didn't uphold it. Okay. Curveball. I think Clemson was playing UVA a little soft once they knew they had the game in hand to give Miami some deceptive tape to watch and plan. Dennis Lopez, good to see you. A huge thing in the game will be Clemson trying to throw the ball out of the backfield to Etienne. If we can limit that, we can win. We addressed that off the top. And again, comparing a possible plan C, plan D for Clemson after A and B go down, it would be similar to the Ohio State game in which Clemson was shut down in the running game with Etienne and was shut down in the passing game with their wide receivers. So they countered with Lawrence running the ball from the quarterback spot and Etienne as a pass receiver out of the backfield. Jordan says Miles Murphy has been better than Bresci up to this point. Got it. Another huge recruit. So this is one of those situations where Bresci, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, where Bresci got all the pub because he was the number one recruit. Well, what's the difference between the number one recruit and like the number 6 recruit? There's hundreds and hundreds of guys coming out each year. And actually, if you look at the Power 5, you've got 75 teams and they sign 20 to 22 players each. That's 1,500 players. So if you're number 1 in the nation and somebody else is number 6, they may end up being better than you, or even if they're number 27. So Bresci, just because people like to look at the very top of the list, got more pub than Murphy. Murphy was a tremendous recruit, and Jordan is telling us that he's been better than Bresci. What are we? I think we're responding to me asking or saying something about Miami's offensive line performing better through the first 3 games than they have in a long time. I believe that's what people are referring to there with Rod the Goat at 2016. Paul Freeman, 2001. Jeff is saying since 2009. And again, that's where you can join me on Patreon. Please join me right there. Just grab the link in the live chat, or you can just take it from the banner that you see below me on the screen. We have a great time on Patreon. We built it up from 15 patrons up until up to 55 in our Voice of College Football community, and a ton of great content over there, including my predictions, 2017 against the spread, and also my top 25 that actually makes sense. Miami's better than UCF. Tulsa's better than UCF. I know that. I don't know if Miami is, but I know that Tulsa's better than UCF. Seth, anybody seen the over-under for Alabama Ole Miss? Joshua asking me what makes me such a huge college football fan. When I started a YouTube channel in 2010, I cut a video and I titled it, Why We Love Sports. I don't even know if that's still on the internet, but that would outline it right there. All the reasons why I love sports, and specifically football. You know, if Florida State keeps playing this way, Lulu Wolf, they should go to the Sun Belt, and they probably not win the Sun Belt. Did I read about Gervin Hall? Maybe that's the player I read about, Norman. Gervin Hall, and somebody let Norman know there. Yeah, I think a curveball came in and let Norman know that Gervin Hall is out for the first half. That was it. I read about Gervin Hall. Thank you, curveball. Dennis Lopez. Kai was historically awful on 3rd down. That's why he was so bad. Was he that bad? Russie. 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 I'll keep practicing that. Russie. Russie. Okay. Tim Powson. Good to see you for the first time in a long time, Tim. Miami's linebackers are the weak link. If we lose, the young guys will soon be the starters. Tim, again, if Miami can win this game, it will be because our offense versus Clemson's defense. I bet Lashley will get job offers come the off season. Could be. Well, good to see you. All right, it's been a nice little live chat with everybody with 109 on the line here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And once again, we are facing a lot of challenges and adversity right here, and that is to say the least. That is a huge understatement. So I am going to have an interesting week in store in regards to a lot of conversations, a lot of conflict to work through, and a lot to read. So we're going to work through that to try to keep our YouTube channel alive here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Of course, you're joining us on our Miami channel. Please join our main channel. If any of you are not subscribed here, please do. Also go over to our main channel. And even though we haven't posted anything for 4 weeks, I can't believe I'm saying that, haven't posted anything for 4 weeks. And during a time in which we would have gained 600 or 700 subscribers normally in a month, we lost about 40, so we need you to hang on there. So for those of you who are subscribed to our main channel, please stay, hang with me, keep the faith, don't give up on me. And for those of you who are not subscribed on our main channel, please do. And if we have any Ohio State fans in the live chat here, please jump on over to our Ohio State channel. You can find any of those by just searching Mark Rogers TV Miami. Well, you're here. Ohio State, or just Mark Rogers TV, and you will find those channels. And please subscribe. Even if you are not an Ohio State fan, for example, or not a Miami fan that would want to subscribe here and just want to support what we do to keep us alive, keep us going, and to build this out to the degree that we need to, please subscribe. I appreciate it. Anything else tonight, folks? Good to see you, Tim. North Carolina did almost pull it off against Clemson last year, of course, 21-20 with the failed two-point conversion, a ill-conceived play down at the goal line. Mister says down goes Clemson. Chuck C. Restrepo needs to replace Pope on punt returns. Pope is very talented, but seems to be a bit scared at times. You got to have the right guy returning those punts, that's for sure. Kennesaw State. I have the Kennesaw State statistics and roster memorized, Jabari. I'm locked in on Kennesaw State. Down goes Clemson, just like in 05. We've got to go back to 05. And we know that Clemson was quite the power in 05, Mister. Come on. Okay, come on. One angry Blackman. I know that, would that be James Blackman? I know that you don't like being a 15-point dog, but just focus on the game, watch the game, enjoy the game, and hope that Miami wins. And regardless of what the point spread is, don't be disrespected by a point spread. Who cares? Who cares about the point spread? Go out there and show that the point spread should not be 15. Because otherwise, based on everything we've seen, yeah, the point spread should be 15. Based on what we know, of the two head coaches, the two coaching staffs, based on what we know of the personnel on each team, based on what they've accomplished, based on what they've looked like to a certain extent this season, but more so what they've looked like against quality opponents, what these players that are going to be playing on Saturday night on each side, how they have performed against quality competition, not against Wake Forest. And I'm talking Wake Forest is usually a decent team, but they don't look to be that great this year. So Clemson has faced really no really good competition this year. And Miami, by the looks of Louisville, probably hasn't either. They have both dominated teams that they should be dominating. But Clemson is the one team with one group of players that have proven in big games that they have the talent, the skill, the ability, and the mental makeup to challenge and win and play big in big games. None of these Miami players have shown that they can do that. None of these players have played in big games and won big games. None of them. What big game have they won? When have they looked good in a big game? The biggest game Miami's won, these players on this team, the biggest game that they've won, the best team that they've beaten would be Virginia last year. They beat Virginia last year. The best that they performed against a good team on a big stage would be against Florida in the opener. Since everybody in football was watching that game, it was against a team that finished in the top 10 the year before and would eventually finish in the top 10 again. And they played them down to the wire. They played a good game, even though it was an extremely sloppy game. They played a hard-hitting, good game in which they were just as good as Florida on that night. But who has prevailed in big spots? Not Miami. None of these players that are going to be on the field Saturday night, that doesn't mean they can't do it for the first time. That means they haven't done it. Never. The Clemson players that we're talking about have won a national championship. They have won ACC championships. They have defeated every challenger in the conference that's been put up before them. They have won college football playoff games. They have won national championship games. They've beaten Alabama. They've beaten Ohio State. They've beaten the best teams in the ACC. They've won all these games. None of these Miami players have proven anything against quality competition. Maybe they will change that narrative on Saturday night. Tim says, correct, Mark, but all that said, new players on both squads and new coaches for Miami, I'd be concerned if I was Clemson. Of course you should be concerned. You don't take anybody lightly. Yeah, they should be concerned. Take it seriously, absolutely. That's how they got to be who they are. They don't look past anybody. I don't think they're really, it depends how you define concerned. They take it seriously. They respect their opponent. They don't fear them in any way, but they respect them. They are very aware of their skill, their talent, their speed, their athleticism. But this Clemson team is not afraid. They've played in much, much bigger games than this. This is not a big game for Clemson. This is really not a big game. Miami's got a number 7 next to their name, not because they've earned it, but because based on the results of the season thus far, they're about where they should be ranked. So they've earned it to that degree, but we've got 2 conferences not even playing. So the rankings are inflated for everyone. First of all, the rankings are inflated for everyone because we've got 2 conferences that would have, the Big Ten had 7 teams ranked in the top 25 preseason, and the Pac-12 probably had 3, if not 4. So we're missing like 6, 8, 9 teams from the top 25. So the ratings and the rankings are inflated. So the 7 in front of Miami's name means nothing. And the 1 in front of Clemson's name actually for this season means nothing. Actually, teams like Georgia and Alabama have proven better against better competition to date. That doesn't mean Clemson's not the best team in the country. That means they haven't played anybody to prove or deserve that number 1 ranking right now. But these players, Etienne, Lawrence, Rogers, Skowski, on and on and on and on, most of them have proven it on big stages in previous years. This is not a big stage for Clemson. It's one of the better opponents on the schedule, but it's the type game that they play 4 or 5 times a year. You know, by the time they make it through a full season, take last year, and they play Texas A&M, a team that was ranked in the top 15, that they played at home on national television. And by the time they play 1 or 2 good teams in the conference, and then by the time they play an ACC championship game and 2 college football playoff games, they will have played 5 or 6 games like this at the end of the year. So at least to this magnitude, maybe beyond it. All right, we've got another vote coming in. Kingdom Consciousness has the Canes winning 28-26. Our tally is 19-4 Miami. Shocker. One angry black man telling us that preseason or early season rankings mean nothing. Tim, thank you. Well, they start to mean something as they play the games out. So my top 25 that actually makes sense means something because it's based on the results on the field, the performance on the field against the opponent, the quality of the opponent. Georgia has no quarterback. That's the problem. You may want to watch Georgia play a little bit more football, Jabari. You may change your mind. We'll see that play out week to week. Chuck, Miami has lost as big favorites recently, so they don't have to be talked into the fact that it could happen. Yes, Will, you have to start somewhere. And I hope my rant wasn't taken the wrong way. That doesn't mean Miami's not good. That doesn't mean that they're not talented. That doesn't mean that they're not just as athletic and really from a talent standpoint nearly as good as Clemson. If we're just going based on sheer talent, meaning how fast you can run, how much weight you can bench press, how high you can jump, doing all those things, Miami's probably only a 3 or 4 point underdog. Texas A&M showed they weren't what we thought they were. Yes. One angry black man, you do wish Russo was playing this year. We literally would be in the conversation for best defensive line in the country. But, understand that the knock against Georgia and what could happen to them next week against Alabama, keep that in mind, that if Alabama is as good as they've been in the past, they could smack Georgia by 3 touchdowns, and that probably tells us more about Alabama and that they're that good than it does that Georgia's not good. Because Alabama, during this run, just about every season, has smacked teams like Georgia, LSU, Texas A&M on down the line. And they win by 2 or 3 touchdowns, maybe more. And those other teams aren't bad. They're actually some of the best teams in the country. 2 years ago, Alabama beat LSU 29-0. And Joe Burrow and company couldn't do anything offensively. And that LSU team went 10-3 and finished like 7th in the country. So Georgia's really good. They could lose to Alabama in Tuscaloosa. They could lose, 38-17. And I would not take away anything from that Georgia's not going to be able to win their division and go back to the championship game. Lashley and Venables. Cheryl, good to see you. You found us. Miami won tonight, huh? The Heat? Chuck is saying, even with 2 good defenses, this smells like an 80-plus point game. Crowds are less of a distraction. And then I've got a pop-up that I can't get rid of in front of your comment. Okay, crowds are less of a distraction this year, and college games are evolving in front of our eyes these days. Well, there's no question about that, Jordan. There would be a little bit more respect for your program had Miami played you every year. If Miami was Florida State and they had to play you every year, and of course, up until just a couple of years ago, Florida State was better than Miami all these years, then these Canes fans would have maybe a little bit more respect for Clemson. You would think 58-0 and 38-3 would give them a little indication. So it's interesting. All right. It depends on when people make comments about teams being good or not good. Depends what you mean good. So Texas A&M could play in the ACC, and they could be in contention for the conference championship game. Not the conference champion, meaning Clemson, unless things change drastically this year. But they could be right in there with North Carolina, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Miami, Texas A&M. Yes, they could. Hurricane Kilo 407. Good to see you, man. Miami will beat Clemson by 20. Trevor isn't expecting the beatdown. Okay, Jake Schwartz has another vote for Miami. Miami is going to kill Clemson at this point. It's 20 votes to 4. Greatest battle of the weekend, Enrique is telling us. All right, I think we've covered it. Well, Curveball's chiming in with Clemson by 14. I don't think I got his prediction. We'll say 20-5 is our final count. Miami would blast A&M. Not so sure about that. Actually, I'm pretty sure about that they would not blast Texas A&M. No. Are we talking about Texas or Texas A&M? Because I got Texas A&M because that's who I was talking about. And then I've got a technical technician coming in talking about Texas. Let's get our team straight to begin with. Yes, David, see you on Patreon. That's where everyone needs to join us to make this really work. To make this really work, then you need to join me right there. Miami wins 42-35, so it's now 21-5. No. Miami, no. Texas A&M would not be in the middle of the pack of the ACC. No. Let me give you one example. 2 years ago, Texas A&M went 4-4 in the SEC. Texas A&M went 4-4 in the SEC. And they played a Clemson team that made it to the national championship game and won the national championship. They took them to a 2-point conversion. Okay? They took Clemson to a 2-point conversion as a 4-4 team in the SEC. And they then played North Carolina State, which was a 9-3 team, a 9-3 ACC team in a bowl game. And what do you think the final score of that game was? Texas A&M 52 and North Carolina State 13. 52-13, Texas A&M beat North Carolina State after taking the defending and the national champion to be to a 2-point conversion. Let's not get into an SEC ACC discussion here because it's not a discussion. It's not even close. Can't do that. So, not talking about, you're talking about 2 years ago, bro. Do you know how much a program changes in 2 years? Yes, and Texas A&M's program's better today than it was 2 years ago. And the middle of the ACC is now much better, or if any better. Do you know that the ACC went 5-19 against the other 4 conferences last year? 5-19. So yeah, bro, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. Yes, let's not argue Texas A&M against the ACC and that they would be just another Wake Forest. Actually, Wake Forest has been better than the middle of tier in the ACC. Oh my goodness. Mister, do you understand that they played 2 games? They played 2 games. We understand that we played 2 games. We played 2 games this season. Do you understand that Mississippi State looked like world beaters in week 1? Do you understand that things change week to week? Do you understand that aside from the elite teams like Ohio State and Alabama, Clemson, that you can count on every week, things like Iowa State and Oklahoma happen every week. You understand that Texas A&M sliding by Vanderbilt and then having issues against Alabama, which everybody will this year for the most part. Alabama's going to play a couple close games, but basically they're going to do this to really good teams every week. You understand that Mississippi State can look that way 2 weeks ago against LSU, then they can turn around and lose to Arkansas. And so this is going to happen over and over and over and over. That what Texas A&M has shown us is they've played maybe the best team in the country last week, and yeah, they lost by 4 touchdowns. Yeah, they're playing in a completely different league in playing in Alabama versus playing Wake Forest and Virginia. And yes, that North Carolina State team that they played 2 years ago was the 2 or 3 seed in the ACC, and they obliterated them. Yeah. Yeah, Shay, you really don't know what the hell you're talking about. A Miami hater. The Miami hater who picked Miami to go 8-4 last year. And what did you go? You went 6-7. So if I was a Miami hater, you would think that I would underestimate you. Oh, I picked you to go 8-4. You went 6-7. The year before, I picked you to go 9-3, and you went 7-6. Actually, I've given you way too much credit. I've been a Miami lover when I should have been a hater, and the program has not been good. It's been a marginal program for 15 years, and the stats and the facts say that. This team could be much different, and I neither hope that they are or I don't hope against it. I really don't care. I'm a college football analyst and college football fan that puts on a neutral show and brings on guests and commentators and analyzes the sport that I love myself and bring on other people. So it has nothing to do with being a Miami hater. I love, if I counted up everybody that called me a hater of their particular team, then I hate everyone. So it basically comes down to I hate everyone. That's how it comes out. Will, we don't know. It's a different team. You haven't played anyone. It looks like a different team. It looks like a different team. But play somebody first. Play somebody really good. UAB is like a top 70 team. So that doesn't prove anything. Beating a group of 5 in the manner that you should have. Playing Louisville, okay, that was a nice win. And I went on and gave Miami all sorts of accolades for not just going there and winning, which I thought would have been a nice win, but going up there and dominating Louisville for most of the game and winning by a score. The score didn't even indicate how dominant Miami was in the game. So I said that was a tremendous game and performance. Louisville's a top 35 to 40 team. We got to see the rest of the season play out. They went to Pitt the next week. They lost. They're 1-2. Okay. And then you play Florida State, who's awful. Who's just Florida State was losing to Jacksonville State by 2 scores. So the Florida State game, you can't even, what do you do with that? It's just a game you had to play. So we don't know that it's a different team. It looks like a different team. It looks like a different team. Cheryl's got a point there. Martin, good to see you. What do you think Miami has to do to keep it close with Clemson? All right, unleash those 2 DNs. This is what I like about Miami's chances is I think that any tremendous quarterback like a Trevor Lawrence, make him uncomfortable, get hands in his face, rough him up, push him down, make him, even when he gets the ball off, he's sitting on his rear end all night. And Miami can make that happen with Jalen Phillips, who is a stud. Quincy Roche, hasn't really jumped off the radar for me this year, but I know based on what he's accomplished in the past, tremendous player. Very much of a technician. I would have loved to have seen Greg Russo stay on this football roster. That would have been tremendous to see those 3. Okay. Man, if they protect the ball, if they don't turn over the ball, which I've got a lot of confidence that De'Ara King is not going to turn the ball over. Lashley's going to give the defense fits in regards to his play calling. I've been very impressed with Lashley setting up the defense, mostly in the Louisville game, to succeed. And they've done a nice job of play calling to protect an offensive line that's better this year than they've been, but probably is obviously going to get its biggest test of the year by far against this Clemson defensive front. But Florida State's got a decent defensive line, and the Miami offensive line, of course, was effective in that game. So I think it's all about getting pressure on Trevor Lawrence, and they have an offensive line there at Clemson with 1 returning starter. Of course, they're all highly recruited up front, but only 1 starter back. And the Clemson wide receivers, for as talented as they are, they're not as accomplished as they've been in the past. I think Miami's got a heck of a shot. If you told me right now that Miami wins the game, I would not be shocked. I'd be slightly surprised. I still have not made a prediction for the game. If you told me that Clemson won close, I'm not going to spit out the score that just kind of hit me today and it felt right, because it's not my final prediction necessarily. But it was a really good game. And if Clemson runs away, I think it's because Miami's going to give them the game. Not because Clemson's that much better. It's going to be because Miami got behind, turned the ball over. And so if it becomes 42-17, then it's because Miami turned the ball over. If both teams, let's put it this way, if both teams bring their best, or if both teams bring their B games, then I think Miami's just as nearly just as talented and has the athletes and the speed to hang and make it a great game. And like I just told the caller, David called, I said that although I trusted Notre Dame week to week, at least at this point, we'll see if it changes with new information each week, we change our opinions slightly. So hang with me here. Miami could turn out to be a better team than Notre Dame. That wouldn't surprise me. But for right now, this Notre Dame group has played better than Miami. I mean, going back to last season, this group of players. But Miami has the capability on a given day to beat Clemson, more so than Notre Dame or North Carolina. Meaning that if you told me we're not worried about staying close, we are concerned only with winning. So it doesn't matter if you take Notre Dame and they can stay within 2 scores of Clemson, and I take Miami and we lose by 5 touchdowns, that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is take the team that's got the best chance of winning the game, pulling off the upset. I say Miami. I say Miami more so than any other. Oh, that's right. I'm a Miami hater. Forget everything I just said. Oh, I forgot. I'm a Miami hater. Why was I giving them so many props? I'm sorry. Martin, I completely screwed that up. I forgot who I was. Miami hater. That's right. Who was that? Shay told me I'm a Miami hater. Yeah, that completely changes everything. Miami's going to lose 52-3. No, again, Miami's got the best shot of anybody in the conference based on what I've seen, based on what I know of the personnel. That doesn't mean they're the second best team in the conference. That means that on a given night, they have the players, if they've got it pulled together, and especially with this quarterback in play. Now, we've seen Miami play with Malik Rozier and N'Kosi Perry and Jaron Williams, but this guy's so much better than they are that that's what should give you a ton of hope, is that Miami has been the second most talented team in the conference, not always played like it, of course, going 6-6 last year in the regular season. But they've got the second most talented roster in the conference, and they haven't had a quarterback. Now they've got a quarterback. That's what you guys should be excited about. I get it. I get why you're excited. I'm just saying you haven't beaten anyone yet. But you haven't played anyone, so it's not your fault. Just saying that Louisville was given way too much preseason hype, and I said that before the game. But that was a good win. And again, it was a good win. It was an exceptional win because you didn't just go up there. And if you would have gone up to Louisville and won 31-28, and both teams would have been just about the same, then you guys made a play at the end and won the game 31-28, I would have said, bravo, you did what you needed to do against the team that was a 2 or 3 point favorite. Good job. But you went up there, kicked their butts, dominated the game, were the much better team, substantially better. And so I said, great win for Miami, because you dominated a team that was supposed to be the 3rd or 4th best team in the conference. And then you came back, and it's not bravo that you beat Florida State, but that you destroyed them. You destroyed them. So hopefully I'm making myself clear. Judge, who do you think would somebody best out of 5, Mark? Who would win the best out of 5 between Clemson and Miami? Clemson's winning a series against Miami. Any kind of series. 5 games between Clemson and Miami. Clemson wins 4-1. All right, technical. You didn't listen to what I had to say. Did not listen to what I had to say. But it's okay. Mark, you're losing your mind. Notre Dame is a better team than Miami. Coach is better, disciplined. Mark, they don't have the second most talented roster. NFL draft proves Notre Dame is the better roster. Come on, Mark. Yeah, but those are NFL drafts that have already taken place, and those players are gone. I'm not necessarily considering Notre Dame to be an ACC team. I tend to discard Notre Dame to a certain extent. But anyway, I get your point. Notre Dame, the recruiting rankings would tell us that Notre Dame is slightly better on the roster. Out of my mind, maybe. All right. Jordan, Miami is in no way on even footing with Clemson. 4-1 is fair. Maybe it's 5-0. Maybe Miami doesn't win that game until the 7th or 8th game. I don't know. But 4-1 on average sounds about right. All right. People are getting fired up now. Miami has way more player in the NFL than Notre Dame. Get out of here, technical. Miami actually does, I'm almost positive, have more players in the NFL. I think there's a number of ways to measure that, but you got to take into consideration the number of players on the NFL rosters, but also look at the draft picks and how quality of the talent it is. So, for example, I'll take an example from Ohio State and Michigan in this most recent NFL draft. They both had 10 players drafted, but all of Ohio State's drafted players were in the top 3 rounds. And Ohio State had 2 of the top 3 players drafted. They had 3 in the first. They had 4 in the first round. Michigan, all of their 10 players were in the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds. So there was no comparison between the 10 players, but they both had 10 players drafted. So you have to measure that out. And I believe Miami's on the low end of the draft scale. I'm almost positive that it's pretty impressive what Miami's produced, even during this downslide in recent years for the NFL draft. But that the players have been drafted in the lower aspect, in the lower portion of the NFL draft. That's all you need is one. To your point, Brett, and one angry black man, exactly. Miami doesn't have to be the better team. Most likely, I'm going to come away, unless proven to me otherwise, I'm going to come away from Saturday night's game, and Miami could pull off an upset. Say they win 34-31, and I'm going to tell all of you, most likely, if it's 34-31, and you're not going to like it, and you're going to be mad at me, even though you're happy that they won, you're going to be mad because I'm going to say, I still think Clemson's better. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what you think. They're going to play, and the team that wins the game is the winner and should be considered the better team. But we still have our right to have an opinion. Clemson lost a game against Pitt in 2016. What did Clemson do? They won a national championship. Pitt lost 5 games. Who's the better team? Clemson. Did they lose the game to Pitt? Yeah. 2017, Clemson went to the college football playoff as the ACC champion. They went 12-1. Who'd they lose to? Syracuse. Syracuse went 4-8. Who's the better team? Clemson. Who won the game? Syracuse. We could give a million examples like that. So Miami could win the game. And I think that even if I came away from that, and even if many of you trying to take off your green and orange still would say, okay, I still think Clemson's better than us, but you won the game, which puts you in a great place in terms of getting to the ACC championship game, of course, because who else is going to beat Clemson? You guys may be the only ones that do it this year. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind is that it just gives you an indication that we're that good. We are good. We're legit. And so, of course, you want to win the game. But even if you lose the game and you lose it 37-31, it's a great game. You can come away from that game and be like, okay, all right. We're a legit top 10 team. We don't know that you are right now. And again, that's not knocking Miami. That's just saying the teams have not been put in front of them. You could say that about a number of teams that we're high on right now, or certain people are high on North Carolina. What's North Carolina this year? They're 2-0. They beat Boston College by 1 score. They beat Syracuse by 25 points. How good's North Carolina? I don't know. I've got an opinion based on what they had last year, based on what they brought into this season, based on all those playmakers and the 2 great running backs, Williams and I can't think of the other. Oh my word, Javonte Williams and Anyway, and the three receivers, De'Ami Brown and Das Newsome and Bo Corrales, and based on, of course, Sam Howell, the second best quarterback in the league, most likely, maybe third. I think I said third last night. I put King ahead of Howell. I said Howell eventually, but King's better now. So same deal with North Carolina. It's not a put down to say North Carolina's, I don't know how good. I've got my opinion. I've got a projection to make, just like I did in the preseason. We argue all preseason, and we've got no results to base it on it, but we can still talk, and we can still have an opinion on how good the teams are going to be. And to a certain extent, we're still in that same bucket for most of the teams in the country. Because unless you're Auburn and you've played Georgia and Kentucky already, or unless you're Arkansas and you've already played Georgia and Mississippi State, you've already played good teams, or you've got a measuring stick to a certain extent where Oklahoma's already played Kansas State and Iowa State, two decent teams in the Big 12. Miami's played Louisville. So North Carolina's played BC and Syracuse. How good's North Carolina? I don't know yet. I want to see them play Notre Dame. I want to see them play Miami. Last time we played them, Malik Rozier did whatever he wanted against them. Notre Dame doesn't want to see King. Yeah, again, that was one game. Miami fans, you should be really happy and put your chest out and beat your chest and brag about 2017. And you should, 41-8. It was a blowout. Those two teams, if you just showed that game and said, rate these two teams, you'd say, well, one team's one of the best teams in the country, 11-1. The other team's like 4-18. Because that Miami team didn't beat the crappy teams on their schedule 41-8. And Notre Dame went and beat LSU in a bowl game. 2017? Yeah, they beat LSU in a bowl game. So that I count as a bad matchup, and more than that, just a one-time deal. You guys are talking about pulling off an upset against Clemson, but not necessarily being a better team. Well, Miami crushed Notre Dame on a given night in 2017. Were they a 41-8 better team? On that night they were. Were they for the season? Absolutely not. They were very close teams for the season. And the other scores of the other games prove that out. You can look at Notre Dame's scores against ACC teams that Miami played or like teams, and the results don't bear out 41-8. Did it happen? Should you be happy? Should you boast about it, brag about it, throw in Notre Dame's face? Yeah, of course. It's fun. It's college football. Is it legit? Yeah, to a certain extent. It was one game, but not over the course of a season. Notre Dame still went 10-3, just like you guys went 10-3. That's like saying, it's like Pitt fans saying they have every right to say 2017, we beat you guys. We're better. And you guys saying, no, you're not. We went 10-3. You went 5-7. But them saying, we beat you. Who's better? Who is better in 2017, Pitt or Miami? I'd say Miami. Over the course of a season, they were better. On that day in Heinz Field, Pitt was better. They won the game. All right. Mark, what do you got here? Mark, the problem with Miami is that last year they severely underperformed, and now with De'Ara King, they are correcting that, so very hard to gauge how strong they are. They should be much better. That's why they're not going to go 6-7. They shouldn't. I picked them to go 8-3. That's why I looked at last year's team, and I looked at this year's team and thought, you know what? They lost their linebacking core. They lost their best cornerback. They lost their best running back, although they're fortified at running back. You guys have three tremendous running backs, especially these two kids at Chaney and Knighton. But anyway, they should be better in the offensive line. But De'Ara King, there's the difference. Oh, I'm not going to pick them to go 6-6 again. They've got 11 games this year, 8-3. That's what I picked them to go, 8-3, because of De'Ara King, basically. And because I thought, you know what, if they can kick the ball through the uprights, and they've got the FIU kicker. So Maybe you win them all. DJ, if we take that same stance, and again, as a Miami fan, I understand you saying that, and that's all fun and good. And you can say that as a fan, then we could say, well, FIU would beat Miami, and Duke would beat Miami, and Louisiana Tech would beat Miami. We could say all those things, and actually, those statements would be more relevant and more valid since those players mostly are still on the same teams. And those teams, the players that played in the 2017 game, are 80% of them are gone. So that's actually a more legitimate complaint, or a more legitimate claim, I should say, for Louisiana Tech and Duke and FIU and Georgia Tech, for them to say, well, we're better than Miami. We'd kill them again. Yeah. Would they? Probably not. All right. Good stuff from everyone. I appreciate everybody right here. We got Adam, the sports guy. Clemson wins 38-21. That seems like a reasonable score. Miami proves they're a top 10 to 12 team in America and continues to improve, contending for a rematch versus Clemson in the ACC title game in December. And that would be a reasonable, if it's a 38-21 game, so you can have different type 38-21 games. If it's 38-7, and then they tack on 2 touchdowns that are meaningless, then, but if it's a legit 38-21, where it's 21-7 at half, and then it's 31-17, and it makes its way to 38-21 in a reasonable fashion, in which Miami's within striking distance, but Clemson keeps them at bay, and they show that they're substantially the better team, but it's not a blowout. It's not a mismatch. Then I, as a Miami fan, would feel like, okay, we're about where I thought we were, and that's not embarrassing. We're good, and hopefully we can improve and get better and be ready to go. So we'll mark that one down for Clemson. It's now Adam, the sports guy. We've got a count of Miami 21 and Clemson 6. Oh, Adon Bay, Clemson 48-13. All right, everyone. It's been a good time. Michael, not forgetting about Cam Harris. Of course not. Technical technician. Madsen, are you kidding me? Quentin Nelson, Zach Martin, Harrison Smith, Ronnie Stanley, Kyle Rudolph, all Pro Bowlers and all Pro. Who I got? The ghost of Ed Reed. All right, we're going with Notre Dame and Miami. I'm not getting into that right now. We did that enough. All right, everyone, we appreciate it. We got one more score prediction. There it goes. DeMel goes Miami 38-35. We've got a final count of 23-7. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please subscribe here. Miami fans, college football fans in general, just if you're supporting the channel and don't even like Miami, still subscribe here. But if you love the Canes, please subscribe right here. Go to our main channel. We're confronting a ton of adversity and challenges right now, but please subscribe at the main channel and join me on Patreon. This is crucial. Please join me on Patreon. There you go. It's right there. Just grab the link. It's in the live chat. Go to Patreon. We've got 55 members at Patreon. You get posts every day. You get live streams, live call-in shows. You get my top 25, everyone together, top 25 that actually makes sense. Get my predictions. I'm 27-17 against the spread this year. 27-17 against the spread. And of course, you get all the content that we post to Patreon right there in the live chat. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, great to see you, and we will see you soon. We've got Clemson Miami coverage coming here all week, so lock it in.